to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
I was gonna buy you some root beers the other day, and I was like, I don't know if he still enjoys trying these.
It would make me so sad because I would want to try it, but I've probably for the last 8 years, I've only drink unsweet tea and water.
Yeah.
Hence the kidney stones.
Kidney stones.
And he just eats peanuts with skins now.
Yeah, just the skin. He peels off the skin, eats the skin, throws the peanut away.
I like the little papery skin of it. I'll tell you, my best friend in 6th grade was a guy named Shu Takayama.
I love it.
Great
you
name.
just did the accent thing.
Shu Takayama.
Yeah.
He had just moved from Japan, he and his family, and he would do origami and stuff, teach me origami. The only one I remember is the frog, but he would say to me every now and then, Ryan, how do you say, and then he'd say something in Japanese in English. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But one day he invited me over to his house to play video games. It was all in Japanese. And
it's like a literal spit take.
Yeah, that was a spit take. And so I took my shoes off at the door, went inside, and I opened up this package of crackers, and the cracker had another piece of colorful paper around it once you opened it. And I went to take that off, and he grabbed my hand and he goes, no, eat that. And I was like, okay. And so it was like a seaweed cracker. It was one of the worst things I've ever eaten in my life.
Seaweed tastes like farts.
As a 6th grader. But here's my good friend Shu, and I didn't want to disrespect his parents. They were so happy that he had a friend coming over. Shu was awesome, man. He was the fastest kid in 6th grade.
Yeah, really. He was.
That dude was amazing.
I've
looked him up. I can't find him.
The national football game or the college national.
Yeah.
The finals. There was a play where one of the Washington linebackers tackles a guy and his helmet falls off, and you're just expecting it to be a giant black dude, and it's an Asian. And I've not heard anybody else stop talking about it. Could you believe? They were like, I was so shocked that it was an Asian guy.
That's funny.
That's not who I thought it would be.
That's so funny.
Or maybe he was Pacific Islanders. Probably a skinny Samoan is what it was. Not like a sumo trainer, but
yeah.
I used to arrange the
The Rock, something like that.
I used to arrange the foot races for Shu during recess, and people would come to me. I was his booking agent.
You're the manager.
Were you taking bets on this?
I should have, man. I should have. Yeah, one guy didn't like that he was losing to Shu, and he tripped him, and Shu landed on his shoulder and broke his collarbone.
Golly,
I know. It was sad.
In 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Were those video games fun though?
I don't remember. I couldn't understand any of them.
Doesn't say
it was
cause
all in Japanese.
That's where video games you get the starters there, and then they'll Americanize it later. For most video games, for a lot of video games, shouldn't say most. For a lot of video games. Interesting. That was what's funny is that's where my mind went immediately. I was like, I bet those games were fun though.
I don't remember, but I'm sure they were.
Gotcha. Well, hey everybody, let's go to the PCC. Come on over to Pierce's Culture Corner, hang out. I love Instagram Reels. For the same reason that I used to love TikTok, but I don't get on TikTok anymore, is just it learns the things you like, and it just
that's not where I thought I was going. I was like, it learns you well.
It learns the things you like, and it's so with TikTok, I noticed the algorithm would learn kind of what you like and just regurgitate that nonstop, and that's why you spend hours. You can just easily just keep scrolling. Everything I like.
Watch
what I like
math
about
videos.
What I like about Instagram is it seems to be a part of the algorithm that a huge chunk of it's what you like. Hey, this guy really responds to these types of memes, this type of content, whatever it is. But every now and then I get things that I'm like, it's lightly tied to it. So for instance, the reason why I say that is we are talking about cookie cutters today, just cookie cutters. It's probably tied in because I like a lot of cooking videos, and this is tied to New York Times cooking channel. But the very beginning of this Instagram reel was, did you know that cookie cutters can tell the future? And I was like, you have my attention. And so I started listening. It was this journalist who had gone on a tour of Ann Clark, who is the world's, at least America's, they sell internationally, so at least America's largest provider of cookie cutters. They may be globally the best, the highest provider of all. And what she had said, the whole point of the Instagram reel, which I'll get to in a second, is that they want to use, or they are suggesting that cookie cutters are cultural forecasters of where the culture is going to go. And I think with some things, maybe what they said specifically is could the sale of cookie cutters forecast this next election that we're going into? Because what they did after the last election in 2016, or excuse me, not the last election, but of the 2016 election, they looked at the numbers after all the sales were done, and they said, these line up with the electoral college percentages between Clinton and Trump. And so what they're wanting to do, which I want to keep an eye on, we'll see if they're going to continue that story, is what they want to do is as they're selling cookie cutters, say, we're seeing leads more this way and leads more that way.
So not that the cookie cutters are proclaiming the future, but the cells are proclaiming.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have
so
a bag
the
of cookie
business
cutters.
of cookie
When you're
cutters.
talking about
And you
this, I'm
cast
like,
them like lots.
yeah, I'm
And
like,
you're like, now the Santa cookie cutter is next to the butterfly cookie cutter. You
So
know what that means.
Santa with wings. Anyway, no, not that way. But in the sense of the sales of
Got
cookie
it.
cutters, the cookie cutter business, as
This
it
would have
were.
been way more interesting if people said it was actually a cookie cutter.
No, right. There's a profit cookie cutter that's in the back. No. So sales of cookie cutters. So maybe a forecaster in regards to some of those things, maybe it can indicate trends. And I think that's what it is. It's not so much a telling the future as much as it is a aid in indicating trends, which I think as someone who is very far removed from cookie cutters are not a normal part of my life at all. I think the first cookie cutter I ever bought was for our youth Christmas party back in December. I was like, these are way too expensive. And then I found the Dollar Tree ones and I was like, there we go. That's more my speed. I just need a sock and a snowman. That's really all I need here. But apparently it's not a massive business, but they do, I think they said between like 15 and 25 million a year, depending on how's it going and stuff like that. They've seen a dip since 2021, which is interesting. I wonder if they saw a rise because of COVID. People were home.
I think there are some industries, disc golf did the same thing, like where there was a spike in sales in 2020 and then it dipped after that. Maybe 2020 is a little bit of a black swan in terms of sales.
Agreed. So anyway, but one of the things that he said that the language in the article is way different from the language from the Instagram reel. The guy in the interview, he actually talks about how he loves learning about the world through the sales of cookie cutters. And so in the Instagram reel, what they said was, Billy Clark knew that Taylor Swift was on tour because they were selling more guitars and music notes. And I was like, or he could just open Instagram and just see, or go to any site ever and be like, Taylor Swift's one of the biggest artists in the world. She's on tour right now. Yeah, exactly.
Be alive.
So it's interesting though. What I think is interesting from a business perspective is them saying like, hey, we've noticed when XYZ artists go on tour, these sales ramp up. We should keep an eye on the tour schedule. Yes. And so like looking at that indicator and saying, hey, how can we do that? And one of the things too, they always want to do is make the shapes as distinct as possible immediately. You don't have to look at a cookie and be like, what is that? And so taking the trends, taking their attention to detail and saying, how can we plan ahead for the trends so we can have the shelf stocked with these certain things? And I think that's interesting if this is such an interesting, seemingly niche indicator of certain sales. I feel like people are going out of their way to pursuing a cookie cutter seems like something people have to pursue. It's not like they're on the street, be like, you know what, I've been meaning to get a cookie cutter, unless they literally have been.
We've had the same ones for like since we got married.
Yeah. It seems like it's something like.
Can we be honest? It can't be a foreteller of the future because you're talking about one market. I've never bought a cookie cutter before in my life.
See, that's what.
My wife has.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious about. Is like, it feels like such a niche. Like it feels like such a.
You could twist it any way you want. Like, we're selling more music notes and guitars. Oh, Taylor Swift must be like, or you could say like,
it's confirmation bias is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're selling more music notes and guitars in the 90s. Oh, Kurt Cobain just killed himself. Like we could have known that beforehand if we had, you know what I'm saying? Like you can make any correlation. It's so stupid.
One of the things that he brought up, which this isn't so much a timeline thing like a Taylor Swift on tour, but an actual cultural thing. So if they sell
a guitar and a marijuana leaf, is it Willie Nelson?
Yes, it's exactly what it is. That's what he said. He was like, well, I don't want to get too far into it, but that weed's got to be Willie Nelson.
We could go down the list.
He said that they noticed a weird spike in hexagons being sold in spring, and they were like, what is this? And so what I think is interesting is they wanted to pursue, why are we having these spikes? Is it an off type of thing that just like people, is this a trend that just people are taking or diving towards, or is it actually something that
cookie cutters?
Apparently a lot of people. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so interesting.
If they're doing cookie parties I don't know about, I want to be invited to one of these things.
Right? Yeah.
I want to go to a cookie party.
I want the cookie party. So there's a Jewish holiday in the spring that they buy the hexagon cookie cutters to do their symbols. And the same thing, so once they started selling globally a few years ago, they were like, why are we selling so much more geese? Like we're selling so many geese and it seems to be very like Eurocentric. Well, there's a holiday in Germany that one of the mascots is a goose. And so one of the things the guy says is like, I'm just really enjoying learning about the world through the lens of cookie cutters. And what I think is
hilarious.
interesting from a business perspective is looking at these things, because it seems like a very specific market, but looking at those trends of like, okay, people who are partaking in this certain thing, may it be a holiday, may it be something happening at the time or whatever, seem to be going out of their way to get cookie cutters. How can my business capitalize on these trends that they're seeing over there? And I think that's very interesting, because that's something I would have never thought about. Like, hey, where do you get your trend information from?
Oh, we just sold a bunch of Christmas trees. I bet Christmas is coming. We should change our model and start selling Christmas stuff.
That's why I was like, I read the article, then I went back and watched the video again, and I was like, why are they using it
Wait,
all
you
about
said New York Times?
Yeah,
that's all we need to know.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah, I was like, why are they making the Instagram reel? Which makes sense because I watched the whole thing. So like, of course, it's clickbait. But they made the Instagram reel all about telling the future. And then I read the article and I was like, it just seems to be that a business is realizing there's certain trends based on certain times of the year and certain things happen culturally, that they're able to say, hey, how can we either predict these things, look forward to the future, or provide within the midst of that? And they have a factory in America. So that's one of the big things of how they can respond to trends so well. But I was just thinking like, from small business perspectives to craft makers to shirt makers to whatever it may be, if you're a business that responds to these trends, maybe keep an eye on cookie cutter sales, like just to see, because it seems like people are pursuing cookie cutters for certain reasons.
I just watched on the plane back from Florida a few weeks ago, Glass Onion.
Yeah.
Was it good?
It was definitely intriguing. I don't know if it was as good as the first one, but
yeah, I agree. I thought it was good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the first.
One of my favorite lines is one of the characters during COVID invented these like trendy sweatpants.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were called sweaty pies, like sweetie pies. And so then in the movie, you find out that she has someone emailed her about this place they were going to make the sweatpants in some other country. They said it's been known to be a sweatshop. And she said something like, awesome, that'll be perfect, thinking that a sweatshop meant that they made sweatpants. So she was looking for trends.
That's literally perfect.
She was looking for trends. Hey, here's a shop that makes the stuff we want. Let's use it.
Let's use it. That's
perfect.
So good.
That's great. Well, hey, Ryan, we're not talking about cookie cutters today, unless you want to. I mean, keep going.
If it was anything like last episode, we just switch topics halfway.
Who knows? Who really knows what we're talking about today?
I thought I knew what we were talking about last time, and then we got excited. Look, that kind of stuff is fun for me, though. I enjoyed it. So today, today and next week, we're going to talk about Proverbs, and it's because I recently read through Proverbs. Every time I read through Proverbs, I get my butt kicked. I decided not to address the topic that kicks my butt the most, because I didn't want to like air all of my laundry and my dirty laundry in that one. But we're going to look at Proverbs, and the book of Proverbs written by Solomon.
It's the quarrelsome wife, isn't it? It's a picture about every time.
It's a wisdom book, and it has good wisdom in it, but it's not prescriptive. It's not like you have to do it this way, but there's some wisdom in it. And today we're going to look at the difference between the diligent person and the sluggard.
But Ryan, isn't Proverbs just some archaic book of wisdom that doesn't apply now?
Well, actually, Pierce, you are so stupid.
Jackwagon.
Yeah.
What's this thing about cookie cutters? Pierce, it's funny because I actually think that most people go, oh, well, Proverbs is in the Bible, ergo we have to do everything in Proverbs the way that it's written. And I think that's typically the response to Proverbs. And I think that if we will begin to look at these wisdom books, especially Proverbs, because it's very anecdotal, it's kind of really short kind of statements. Once you get past chapter 9, it's a lot of like really short statements that are being made that could almost all fit on cookie cutter, or not cookie cutter. What's the word that I want? Fortune cookie kind of things. Yeah.
Cookie cutters.
Yeah. So it's one of these things that it's like, I do think that there's wisdom here, but I think that it would probably be, I think the application of it is probably up in the air for different people.
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
So what I think about every time I read through Proverbs, I think about three things. So we're going to talk today about the sluggard and the wise person, and the sluggard being the lazy person or the idle person. And I don't know. I can't think of a time in my life where I haven't felt of myself that I'm lazy. And I don't know where that comes from. I think part of it for me is just comparison. I see a lot of people who do a lot of other things. I I spend a lot of time now creating content in one form or another.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time writing sermons or writing blog posts for the daily videos. I spend a lot of time working, but it's not the same kind of work that other people do.
Which is funny because if you just did nothing but teach at the 456 and do counseling and discipleship, like we would say that's a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now you add in podcasts, Simpler Bible,
Yeah. Daily videos.
painting, like all these other things. Like it's
Yeah.
a lot.
It's really weird that I feel lazy, but
It is really weird.
Yeah. But I want to make sure that I'm not. And so I think that there are some things. One of the thoughts that I was having the other day is that there are a couple of ways to waste time. And one of the ways to waste time is by being a sluggard, being irresponsible with it in the sense that you do nothing. And that's what we'll talk about a little bit more today. But then the other side of that coin is I think that we can be time wasters by being needlessly busy. So we're so thin, we're so divided that we don't get a chance to do anything well. But let me read through a couple of these verses and just we can kind of talk about them and kind of talk about some practical ways that these things make sense in the life of a believer, because I think that these are, look, I honestly think that these things are just practical things. Like if you were talking to somebody who wasn't a Christian, I think that these things apply.
Yeah, we've always said
in
that,
life.
that Proverbs is not necessarily like, this isn't all like godly wisdom.
Yeah.
This is just like wisdom in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So
There are things we would say make more sense for those of us who put faith in Jesus.
yeah,
But I think it's not just specifically designed for us.
yeah.
It's wisdom in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll begin in Proverbs 6:6. It says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in the summer, gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you be there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little slumber." This is the phrase that always plays in my head. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Poverty comes upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. So this is going to be kind of a repetitive thing through Proverbs, that the sluggard desires and never has. That's kind of, they get to the point of harvest and there's nothing in the field. Because the thing that seems to be in common with the sluggard is they're not ever willing to do the groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ever willing to do like what it takes to get to the reward, And I think like we could probably talk about this in a lot of different ways from a cultural perspective, and everybody gets a trophy kind of thing, mentality or whatever.
Stinking millennials.
But
I'm joking.
But it's one of these things that it's like from a very practical standpoint, I always try to tell my boys, and I've told myself this for years, that I am practicing right now for who I want to be in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what I am putting my time and my energy into now is shaping who I'll be in 5 years. And if I am not deliberately, intentionally making steps that will move my life forward, move my family forward, then I can't wake up in 5 years and be like, wait a minute, where's all this advancement that I was hoping for? I can't be disappointed
Right.
that he's saying, consider the ant who stores up her bread in the summer so that like there's food in the lean months, right? And so just from a practical standpoint, part of being a diligent person is having some forward thinking mindset. Like this isn't a matter, this is contrary to Micah, to what you and I've talked about before, where sometimes we have not trusted the Lord for our provision.
Yes.
This is looking forward, recognizing, look, I'm going to have bills that are need to be paid next month, and I can trust God, but there's a big difference between sitting on my hands and doing the things that God has put before me to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you and I've said for the 21 years we've known each other, well, 21 years ago, I wasn't saying this because I wasn't married, but you were engaged to Cammie at that point, and were we all married already? Y'all weren't married quite yet, right? 21 years this year. Yeah. And so one of the things that we've always said, though, when we've had families is we'll do whatever it takes to take care of our family. I think that's always been true. But I think that there are a lot of people who just kind of hope good things are going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Or just hope that things work out.
This is people who will consistently go buy lottery tickets in the hope that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's unfortunate about that is that like there isn't anything in life, like every now and then I don't know, like saving money, weight loss, being educated. These are all kinds of things that you'll hear people go, they kind of surround a lot of like New Year's resolutions or whatever. Like, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to save some money. I'm going to read another book or whatever. And then you get to the end of the year and they're like, man, I didn't see as much change in my weight. I didn't see as much change in my physical fitness. I didn't see, well, what did you do? Well, nothing. Mm-hmm. Well, why are you looking for a harvest if you didn't do any work?
I think that's a good point, that this is, we tend to read a verse like that and think this is all financial.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, like, I'm even thinking like in the terms of, it's funny to me that you feel lazy, because in terms of the ministry that's on our heart, that we have a passion for, we feel like God has drawn us towards. Britain, I'm trying not to use the word called in the way we used to, sorry. But I think it's funny you feel lazy, because you have done,
I don't want to be.
You have done these things in terms of ministry.
Yeah.
Like we have for a long time at the 456 said, how do we continue to accomplish the goal of the future of like us continuing to live more like a community, taking care of each other better? How are we doing a better job? How can we do a better job of investing into men who will step up into leadership roles? How can we do a better job of investing into people in general who can continue to, like, we're thinking about the future and implementing stuff now. So I'll give you an example. One of my favorite times at the 456 was right after we launched at this new building in Dove Creek. COVID comes.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
And like everybody across the world is like, we don't know what to do with this. So we never technically stopped meeting. We just said we're going to go virtual, and we did it for, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
5 weeks maybe.
5 or 6.
Maybe 5. So during that time, there were a few people, some of our core people who've been with us for a long time, that would still show up on Sundays.
Yeah, they're like, hey, y'all are recording live,
can
right?
We come? Right. They were like, this is weird. So that was my favorite thing. It's like the church doesn't cease to happen,
right,
because of an outside event. We stored up, if you will, because we spent this time together as a community, and us as teachers, we're investing, and so we're seeing the benefits of that. And even now, like the things we hear, like I so love hearing, Ryan, when you tell me like, hey, there was this need that I took to the care team, and they like even outside the budget are meeting these people's needs. Like we have a little bit of money budgeted for that, but then there's most of that money probably comes from outside, just people giving. Like that's it. Like you've even from a financial perspective, those people have stored up, because when there's a need, they're able to meet the need.
And you and I've talked about this a lot, and Pierce has been with us long enough too to have seen this and walked with us in this. And I know that Micah and I started the church, but you've been with us so long now, I feel like you're just part of it. You know what I mean? I just feel like you're part of us. But one of the things that's interesting, Micah, is prior to Pierce beginning, there were like 4 or 5 other people that started churches with us, people who love the Lord, people who are still in ministry. These aren't people who have quit ministry, but the churches they started at that point, they didn't continue because of financially they weren't able to, or whatever. Like it wasn't growing the way they thought it was going to grow. You and I and Pierce, we were like, man, we are convinced that this is where we're supposed to be. And so the church, 456, is 14 and a half years old now. We've been in the new building for 4 years. We were given the building 5 years ago. We 3 worked tirelessly under your direction, Micah, to renovate that building and renovate that house on the little bit of money that we had, and still do ministry for a year before we moved in there. And now we're moving to 4 services, and we're building a new building. And I think it's like what we're doing now is what we are seeing the fruit of what we have worked so stinking hard for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that there were so many lean years that we were like, we weren't getting any money from the church, none, 0. And then at one point we were getting paid $400 a month for like 5 years. We were getting paid $400 a month, paid for groceries maybe at that time. You know?
I remember one year when someone like gave me and you, this is before you were here, Pierce, like a fairly large check at the end of the year. I don't know. It was like multiple thousands of dollars. Like we each got like $3,000 or $4,000 at the end of the year. And I remember thinking like,
we made it.
Holy crap. No, I was just thinking like that it was just such a blessing.
It was, because we
were grinding to do, because you're right. We were convinced of this. So it's funny to me, all that said, like, it's funny to me you feel lazy, because like in the ministry that God gave you a heart for, you've been consistent.
We haven't quit.
And not stopped no matter the circumstance.
Yeah.
It's a different conversation probably when you talk about how you and I trust God financially through that. But like, I'm saying, like, I think this goes beyond finances, the wisdom of this.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people just think financially. I will say this. I do think you've mentioned this recently, Pierce, maybe it was last podcast beforehand, was like, there's a lot of financial illiteracy
Yeah.
And I think that there is some wisdom that people need to hear from this in this regards.
Yeah.
It's funny. The flip of that is the guy who stores up in the storehouse and says, I don't have enough.
Right. Luke 12.
Right. And so there's the flip side of it. So there's wisdom in storing up, but
the converse of that, the Luke 12 guy, he's finding his life in his possessions.
Yep.
That's the difference.
This is not that conversation.
I think that Christians have a knee-jerk reaction to chapter 12 of Luke, and they're like, I don't want to be like that.
Yep.
And so then they don't prepare or
nothing.
plan.
Right.
So like, I'll give you another practical advice, another practical way that this works for me lately that's not financial is I love my boys and my wife very much. And I have realized that just in the busyness of the week, a lot of times, like when they're going to bed, I'll be like, all right, love you boys, good night. And it's kind of just in passing. And I've just thought, I don't like that. I don't like that it's just in passing. I don't want it to be my sign off for the night. And so I have, does that make sense?
This is Ryan signing off.
But you know what I mean?
I do what you mean.
It's like you get up from lunch with some friends that you hadn't seen in a long time. You're like, all right, love you guys. See you later. Or good to see you or whatever. And it's just what you say. And so what I've sought to do over the last month is be really intentional about conveying to each of my family members, man, I love you. And like engaging them with at least one question a day where I'm like actually engaging them, not just in passing, because I want to create in them a place where in 4 or 5 years, they're like, man, I was really loved. I was really cared for.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
So I can't expect my boys to go, man, my dad really loved me. My dad really conveyed care for me. My dad conveyed interest in me. My dad helped me with my basketball. I can't expect them to say or think those things about me if I'm not sowing that into them now.
Yeah.
And so like, just trying to do the same thing with Michelle.
I was thinking about that with kids. Like after you mentioned that, I love to hear my boys talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is
awesome.
in essence storing up for their future. You know what I mean? Like as a parent, I am doing the work now, storing up. I'm not going to just like not do anything intentional spiritually with my boys, hoping that someday.
Right. They're spiritual men.
Right. And it's not that, I mean, obviously a lot of that
That's
power
another
rests
area
in the
I feel
spirit.
like I suck. But
I mean, I think that like, there's an aspect of that as parents where we have to think, I'm going to store that up in terms of my kids, like point them towards Jesus consistently.
Yeah.
So that in the future, like we'll be able to reap the harvest of that.
Yeah.
I would love for my grandkids to be able to talk about, well, I'll even say it like this. So the family that led my dad to Jesus had a huge influence on my dad. There were a few men in my dad's life that had a huge influence on him apart from that family. But so like a lot of the spiritual maturity I have is based on my dad investing into me, mom and dad investing in me in that way. So now that I can pass that to my kids and to their kids, like there's this lineage,
there's a legacy,
legacy that goes on because of the storing up, if you will, and the same wisdom mindset, not just saying, God, I hope that you'll do something cool in my kids' lives. Now, granted, that happens. I mean, you guys, I think, are great examples of that. I mean, well, your mom was good, but I'm saying like with your dad leaving and then Ryan with your family, like y'all are examples of how God can graciously,
of course,
like, you know, work in people's lives apart from their parents. But how much less would you guys have had to deal with in your spiritual journey or journey in life in general if you didn't have to deal with all the chaos from your parents growing up?
Well, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, Ryan, up in Oregon, and I was just saying it's amazing how much confidence both my boys have. Like they have more confidence now than I do as a 48-year-old. And just to see them kind of be their own people and do their own thing. And he goes, isn't it amazing what happens when you grow up in a home where
that's
like
a good home.
Yeah. But all right, let me read these other couple of verses here. Proverbs 13:4 says, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Okay, so the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the diligent's richly supplied. 15:19 says, the way of the sluggard, I like this image a lot. The way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the uprightness is a highway, a level highway. And so there's this idea that the sluggard is like, man, I wish things were different. I wish things would be changed. I wish things would be better. And they're not doing anything to change it. They're just sitting back going, God, I wish things would be better. And it's like their way is like so one of the first things I did when we moved into our new house, I could tell within like 3 months from our driveway, we walk across the lawn to the front door and it was starting to wear a path there. And I was like, that's going to look really ugly. So like 3 months in, what I did is I put some stones down so we can walk on these pavers. But we have like 20 in the spring. We have like 20 big red ant beds all over the church property. and I'll kill them. But it's amazing that what these little ants with these little feet can do, and these highways they make across, the backyard. And it's because there's a verse in Proverbs that says, all work is profitable, but how does it say it? But like laziness begets nothing or does nothing, right? So like the main point being, any kind of work is profitable. You talk to somebody who's a fitness trainer and they're like, man, you want to start, you want to get better, walk. Like do something. Do something for 15 minutes a day if that's all you can do. Move. Like it starts with movement, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this idea of the sluggard, that the sluggard's like, man, I wish my circumstances were different, but they don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And in 29 years of ministry, I've had that conversation with people a lot. And I'm like, they're like, man, I just wish things were different. I'm like, all right, well, it's got to start by different choices.
Yeah.
What choices are you willing to make that are going to be different? And there's wisdom in that, because like people are like, man, I don't really like my circumstances. Okay, well, how can we change them?
Yeah.
What are some practical ways inside the realm of following Christ that we can change these circumstances?
Yeah.
And I think that that's where the wisdom and the following Jesus marry each other, is like, you have to do something. You have to, if you want a harvest in the spring, you have to plant in the fall.
Yep.
And so that's practical. And there are a lot of ways to do that in Christ. And like, there are things I wouldn't say go be a stripper, for example. Like what I mean is that there's
Like pole stripper or like paint stripper?
Yeah. Like
Any
like
stripper,
at Desiree's, So yeah, you can't be any kind of a stripper. No, but you know what I mean? Like, I think people are like, well, what can I do? Well, anything that glorifies Jesus, go do anything. But like, I think people are so unwilling to do anything.
I have a feeling that's a cultural thing now.
What's that?
As an example, I've heard people say, Ryan reads the Bible this much, he knows so much about the Bible, I'll never get there. I feel like it's worthless to try. I think we on social media see these people who are successful fitness, they're successful in finances, and we're like, it's not even worth trying, I'll never get there. So instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to start being diligent about just making little changes in my life to add these little things to like move forward, then I think culture kind of makes it that way. It's like how you see everything on social media and on television and the news is like, the successful people have all this stuff and you have nothing.
Yeah.
It really is like a third world mindset. Instead of saying like, well, what can I do to like chip away at that?
Yeah.
I mean, none of us make very much money.
No.
And all of us have been doing things for a while.
To invest,
wisdom,
to be smart.
investment wise, Pierce has surpassed me in the property investing. But like, we're doing this kind of stuff.
You've surpassed us all in crypto.
Yeah, which might jump me ahead of Pierce in property eventually.
That's true, yeah.
Because I'll have more. But like, that's the
I'm
plan.
bringing up the rear.
So, I did tell you a couple years ago.
I know.
But I think point being, like, we're all doing stuff not with the intention of like, we never saw someone with like this giant mansion house or like this like giant boat or these things, and we're like, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get to that point.
Right.
What we said was, how can we be wise and not be sluggards, to use this language, with what we have and with the things we have the ability to change, and we start chipping away at it.
Right.
You know, so like you could say, like, I know people who are like, man, I'll just never be that way. I'm just gonna work hard and then see where it takes me. And I'm like, but that's not working hard.
No.
Well, it might be working hard in terms of a job, but it's not working hard in terms of being wise with your money.
It's not being wise.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing I think about, like, we'll talk about that a little bit next week, the wisdom of the wise person and the fool. But like, exercising this wisdom, that's the difference between the diligent person. The diligent person is looking for opportunities. The diligent person's considering the things around them, their resources, their opportunities. One of the things, two other verses really quickly, Proverbs 20 verse 4 says, the sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He seeks a harvest and has nothing, which is a really funny thing. But I see people do this kind of deal all the time. They don't lay any groundwork, and then they're surprised that it didn't work. They're surprised that it failed. And then I think that this verse is kind of a response to that, but it's Proverbs 21:25. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. So a desire unmet, that's hard for people. That's hard for anybody. Like, when you have a desire, when you have a craving, and it continually comes unmet, you want your marriage to be better, you want to be healthier, you want this, you want that, and it consistently is not met, that'll kill you. That'll discourage you. That'll depress you. But if you're not making any strides to advance that, Like the question that I would ask is, what are you expecting? Kind of the opposite of that. I love this text. We talked about this years ago when we did one on money and finances, but I love this text in Proverbs 27, and it says, know well the conditions of your flocks, give attention to your herds. Riches do not last forever, and a crown does not endure to all generations. When the grass is gone and the new growth appears and the vegetation of the mountains is gathered, then the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats will be the price of a field, and there will be enough goat's milk for your food, the food for your household, and the maintenance of your servants. So there's this idea here of take care of your crops or your herds so that when this over here fails, you still have something here that can move you forward. And I think the difference between the sluggard and the diligent is the sluggard they're like, well, I'll try this one thing. If it doesn't work, I'm done. And the diligent's like, man, I'm moving forward one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so Asher came to us recently, and he was like, I'm not really enjoying DECA. We don't do anything. We don't.
What's that?
I don't even remember what it stands for.
Is it a school thing?
Yeah, it's a school thing. And so,
sounds like a cult.
So it's, I mean, it looks good on a college resume or whatever, but like they haven't really been doing anything. And he has a deal next week that we need to buy him a blazer for, new shoes and slacks and a shirt and tie and all this stuff. And he was like, Dad, I don't like it. We've had one meeting. I went to one thing. He goes, I'd rather just focus on basketball. I don't like it. And I'm like, all right. I was like, what's it take to get out? Like, is there anything we got to do? And he goes, we have to sell 2 raffle tickets. I was like, done. Like,
wait, you got to sell those raffle tickets to get out?
Yeah. So I'm
it's
like,
sounding more like a cult. Like,
So I'm like, that's way cheaper than new shoes and a blazer. And like, we can, like, I was like, okay. I was like, we'll sell the raffle tickets. And I was like, look, man, I said, somebody somewhere is going to tell you, well, you're a quitter. You're not. Like there are things in your life sometimes that you try and you're like, this isn't working, and you try something else. But that's the difference between the diligent and the sluggard. The Bible says, this is such a funny verse to me. It says, 2 things. It says the sluggard buries his hands in the dish and won't even bring it back to his mouth. And then the sluggard says, there's a lion outside. I'll be killed in the streets, so that he doesn't have to go out. Yeah. Right. And so the sluggard is looking for reasons not to do something. The diligent is being wise and going, okay, I don't enjoy this. This isn't effective. This isn't moving me towards my goal. I need to drop this so I can do this. And I think some people go, oh, you're lazy because you're shifting gears or you're doing something different. Right. It's like, no, the diligent person is considering the future. The diligent person is considering the direction they want to go. The diligent person is considering the harvest that they want to reap at the end of whatever the labor is. And the diligent person is going, all right, I'm not going to make excuses for it. This is what's going to help me get there. Right. And the sluggard, what seems to be a common factor with the sluggard is they're like, I'm not really interested in trying. I'm not really interested in doing. I'm not really. So if Asher was doing that with everything he was involved in, it would be a different conversation. Yeah. But he's just like, Dad, like this is not where I want to be spending my time. And I'm like, yeah, man, I get it. When I moved back to Lubbock after my sophomore year in college, I had gone to school at Texas Tech, and after my sophomore year, I made Lubbock my home and moved back up there. And I needed a job desperately. And so my uncle in Midland worked at Asco Rentals. And I had worked in the oil field for the previous 3 years whenever I was home in the summers and worked. I had to be clocked in by 6:30, working by 6:30. Usually got off 5:30 or 6 in the evening. And I was always dirty. And so like when my friends wanted to go to a movie or whatever, I was like having to go home and shower first. And I thought I would like a job where I can go out to eat with my friends or something after work without being covered in junk. Yeah. So I'm looking for a job. My uncle says, I can get you a job at Asco Rentals. And I needed work. So I was like, okay, done. So my job at Asco Rentals there in Lubbock was to go into the wash bay where they would pull in these backhoes that had come off of these job sites covered in grease and mud, and to power wash them all day, one instrument after the other, one big tool after the other. And all this stuff would blow back on me, and I would be soaked and I would be covered in grease and mud. And after the second day, I went into the office. I was like, yeah, dude, I'm out. And my uncle called me pissed. He was so mad that I was so lazy and so irresponsible. And it was good money. But what I ended up doing is I ended up working at Hastings so that Pierce and I could have that in common. And then because I needed a little bit more money, I got a second job. And I worked twice a week for a quadriplegic lady. And from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., I had gone through all the training to help care for her. And I gave her nurse 2 nights off a week. Okay. And that was the money equal to my other job, but I still had my time. I was still able to get off work and I wasn't completely covered in filth. And so for me, my uncle probably would have called me a sluggard. For me, I was being diligent, knowing where I wanted to get, and I was trying to figure out how to get there. Now, have I made some really stupid choices in my teens and my early 20s? 100%. Did I quit jobs I shouldn't have quit because I thought another opportunity was going to work for me? Yes. And a couple of those decisions put me in a bind for like a year and a half. But I didn't stop. I kept moving forward.
You still had a goal you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So I haven't ever quit putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that's the difference between the diligent and the sluggard. The sluggard kind of throws their hands up in the air and they're like, there's a lion in the street today. Yeah, I want this harvest, but I'm not really interested in the sowing. Like there's an expectation without any work. There's an expectation without having put anything into it.
One of my favorite things to do in the summer at the disc golf course with the big red ants, because I hate them so much because they hurt so bad when they bite me. Honestly, I'd rather have my foot covered in fire ants.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, because you'll get some bites, but they don't all bite you. You know what I mean? You're able to get a bunch. I'd rather have a few fire ant bites than the big red ant. The big red ants, it just is like, it's like this.
It's painful.
It hurts. So when I'm like, if I'm walking slowly by one or running slowly by one, I will cover their hole and pack it with dirt. Just because I'm like, suckers. But you know what's funny? That's like...
But they're not sluggards, so they get right to clean it out.
That's true.
It's adversity that just came into their life. They had done the work to get the hole set just like it's supposed to be, and some sucker comes in and shuts it off. Immediately, the hole starts to open up. It does not take long because they have to keep it open. Like that's their lifeline. That's how they're getting out to get stuff. So it's when adversity comes... The response is we work. And I think a lot of times for us, when adversity comes, we crumble and we stop doing the diligent work.
Well,
I was hoping you'd say that you pick up one of those ants and put them on your disc and then throw it.
Throw it.
Should bite its head off.
I
heard they're good.
Yeah, we had
weird
termites in Belize.
Okay, is it good?
It was very good. Well, it was. I shouldn't say very good. It tastes like carrots, which was really interesting.
They're sweet.
So I took a few bites.
I would 100% try.
But we went to the tree and he pulled out a leaf, got some crawl on it.
You tried them like live,
right in the rainforest, man. I grabbed a pinch and just tossed them in there. As I was like, I'm not going to get any chance again. I feel I mean, if I ever come back to Belize, like, I'm
maybe
gonna
you
do
could
this.
hire yourself out in San Angelo now. If people have termites, instead of calling it termite pest control, I'll come over and eat them all for you. And then
I do need a good protein.
Michelle and I call that riding the bubble. You rode the bubble. And here's why we call it that. We went to San Antonio for an anniversary 6 years ago and saw Wicked. And it was a great play. I have some issues with the story, but the people who performed it was fantastic. I mean, it's on again right now, or it just finished again in San Antonio. And I really wanted to go back. We just didn't have the means to this time, but we were there for our anniversary, and this was a special week where they were doing some fundraising, and they were selling rides in the bubble that the Good Witch rides down in on the stage.
That's kind of fun.
And it was like $300. Cool. And I was way too tall, but Michelle was the perfect height and weight to go do this. And I was like, we should go do it. You should go do it. That would be amazing. We'll get pictures. We get to meet the cast, $300. Yeah. And I was like, man, we can't swing it. We can't swing it. And now here I am 6 years later, wishing we had swung the $300 because, so we say, ride the bubble. Like if you're not going to get a chance to do this again, ride the bubble, ride the stinking bubble, eat the stinking termite.
This is a detour, but I'm going to tell you what mine should be. I need to adopt the language. So the first year Hannah and I were married, there was this company, I actually just bought a puzzle from them that gives us a chance to win $1 million if the puzzle is a QR code, so we can scan the QR code, see what we win. But the same company 6 years ago when we got married, they did a 12 hours of giveaways, and every hour was a different giveaway. And if it's sold in the first minute, then it's gone. Or if somebody won it in the first minute, then it's gone. But it has the whole hour to basically get picked up. Some of them you just buy, and it's such a really good deal. Some of them you enter into a raffle. But hour 12 from 11 p.m. to midnight was a $20,000 trip to Antarctica for $1,000. Awesome. And it was
Wait, they were selling that?
Yeah. So they were selling. It was worth $20,000, and they were selling it for $1,000. I know, and I was like, that would have been every penny we had. Like at that point. So I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way. And now, anytime it gets brought up, I'm like, so every time I look at that puzzle, I'm like, I could have gone to Antarctica for 2 weeks, and you would have been with a research team. They would have taken you to.
Holy crap!
Dude, I know. So and I was like,
ride the bubble.
I know. Go to Antarctica.
Instead, you got to eat termites.
Yeah. I know that's right. Yeah, which was fun.
But here's something that's interesting. Proverbs 26:16. So all this stuff about says a sluggard turns on his like a door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. A sluggard, I know, a sluggard buries his hand in
It's funny that their bed creaks like mine does.
I know.
Yeah.
A sluggard buries his hand in the dish and it wears him out to bring it back to his mouth.
Oh my gosh,
You know?
that's hilarious.
So first he was like, I don't even want to bring it back to my mouth. And all right, I'll do it. But golly, that's so exhausting, you know? And so the last thing that Proverbs says about the sluggard, and this is interesting because it's contrary, it's different a little bit in form than everything else he said. So Proverbs 26:16 says, the sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly.
Okay, that's a good one.
So that's the thing that's interesting, that's in common with all these things. So the way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns. He craves and gets nothing. Listen to this one. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke in your eyes is the sluggard to those who send him or count on him. So if somebody's counting on the sluggard, they're going to be let down. And all this stuff. Why? The sluggard's wiser in his own eyes. Why is the sluggard this way? Because he believes he knows best. And so the diligent is, and this is one thing I think is true across the board. I really do. Diligent people are willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to hear advice. They're willing to be wrong. They're willing to be corrected. They're willing to be shown another way, even if they don't adopt that way.
Yep.
So you and I talked about different financial investments. And I don't disagree with your way, but what you've pointed out is I'm not as familiar with crypto as I am with stocks. And so I'm investing in my comfortability. You're investing in your comfortability.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with stocks. I mean, with crypto, but like it's
okay.
I'm comfortable with the model.
I'm going back to what you've said before. You have a confidence in the people who know more than you that you've taught to, the company you're keeping.
The company I invested in, I'm completely confident in.
And the company of the people you keep who know more.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you're confident in where this will land eventually.
Yep.
Right.
Your point is I wasn't so concerned about the risk, but when Dusty first told me about this
my point is you've done your due diligence.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Right.
My confidence, if you call it that, my comfortability or is with the fact that I've done the work to figure out. This wasn't, someone didn't just say, hey, give me 20 grand to invest into this and you don't know anything about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, sounds great. That doesn't seem wise.
Right.
What seemed wise was learning, hearing what someone else said, even though it sounded really weird up front, trying to learn about it. And then once I learned about it, then I started investing.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, let's go. So the thing about the sluggard is they're like, no, I'm smarter than what the Bible says, 7 sensible people. Like I know better than you. And I'll say this from like a counseling perspective over nearly 30 years. It's amazing to me how many people have come to me for advice and I give them advice and they're like, no, I know better than you. And I'm like, okay, but you're sitting in front of me because you're broken. I'm trying to help you.
And they're like, nope.
And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, I'm asking you to do the smallest thing. Just move. Somebody has to be willing to take a step.
I think there's a sense where like you gain confidence in the things that you think you know. And I think your point is what the point of this part is in Proverbs, sluggard is wiser in his own eyes, is when someone presents another perspective that person, the sluggard, is not willing to learn because they know best. Yeah. I'll give you an example. We made a stupid financial decision after Cami and I got married. So she quit teaching. She started teaching right when we got married, she taught for 2.5 years and then quit. And so she had a little bit of retirement built up in her retirement account, which we were going to do something with because she wasn't going to keep teaching. And I found out that money basically goes away after a certain point if you're not teaching. So in my head, I'm like, she had this car with a pretty high interest rate when we got married. I'm like, well, we could save money by knocking out this car loan. Then we're not paying that amount of interest every month, which is like a reasonable thought, right?
Right. Yeah.
What I didn't know was that it would have been more beneficial percentage-wise for me to roll without penalty her investment into another investment that was a TRS that would have gained, because now that percentage is gaining percentage,
more than the interest,
right? And I would end up making more money on that in the long run than I would by wiping away the loan. So I go to this meeting. Someone was about to do the Dave Ramsey thing. It was like a precursor meeting to that, and they said something. I was like, "Yeah, we just did this and paid off the loan." And they're like, "No, that was a stupid decision." And my gut instinct was to be like, "How could that be a stupid decision?" I didn't say that, but in my mind, I'm like, "How could that be stupid?" Because I was paying interest and now I'm not on it. And then I heard him and I was like,
oh crap.
So that's what I mean is like, there are people, I've talked to people about some of the stuff Pierce and I are doing investing wise before, and they're like, no, this is the way it's going to work. And I'm, or even like crypto, I've told people about crypto and they're like, I don't have any money to invest. I'm like, but if you put $100 in it right now, you've started.
Yeah.
$25 in it now, you've started. You know
that's
what I mean?
That's what people who talk about stocks say. They say, look, put in $100,
just a little bit. Yeah. And if you dollar cost
begin.
average, in other words, if you just buy on a consistent basis, if you put $5, if all you could afford, if you're like, I don't have any money, I'm going to do something on the side to make $5 or $10 extra a month and put it in. That is a start. And that's the idea, I think, of the wise man versus the sluggard.
Yeah.
Is that you're not saying, well, I'm never going to get to the place or I don't have enough. You're like, the question is, how can I start? How can I begin to accomplish a goal?
Yeah. Well, and I think that I'm not going to say that I've never had the excuses in my head. I think I'm not, to use the language of Proverbs, I'm not scared of the lion in the street. You know what I mean? Like, so the sluggard's like making up excuses. There's a lion in the street. Can't go to work today. Can't go do this today. Like, I try a lot of things and not all of them go well, but I try a lot of things.
That's a good point. I wonder if some of this is that people are scared of failure.
Yeah.
Like being perceived as a failure.
Yeah.
The reality is there will always be lions in the streets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So-called.
There's always excuses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's never going to be a situation where you're like, well, there's no adversity now. I can go do this thing.
That was one thing that I found interesting that my father-in-law told me, who seems very conservative in a lot of aspects of his life, and seems like a person who would tell you need to have all your ducks in a row before pulling the trigger on this, that, or the other, or taking a step towards whatever, which is his perspective, which I would think is his perspective of wisdom.
He's much safer in his investments than you would be.
But in regards to family and having kids, this is like one of our talks whenever me and Hannah were engaged. He said, he was like, hey, Pierce, if you ever start making excuses to not have kids, you're always going to make excuses. He's like, just have kids, which maybe he just wanted grandkids, but I was like, you're just thinking about that just in general, just across the board. Like, if you were somebody who's prone to make excuses, that's something you have to be pretty intentional to push back on, to continue. Because if you begin to make excuses in any realm of life, there's always excuses to make. There's always ways around not doing certain things. Which I think is one of the, like, we've talked a lot, Micah, just on the road and stuff like that over the past 10 years of me traveling with you. Like, intentionality was a huge word and shift in my language in a lot of our early conversations. And it's funny to think, looking back at things like, or looking at Proverbs right now in this conversation, because that's just all those conversations in the past just came back for me. Like, which is actually something you taught a long time ago as well, Ryan, at the BSM, before I even knew you. You said the same thing you said at the beginning of this podcast. Like, you're not going to wake up tomorrow the man you want to be. Like, you have to take it. You have to take steps. You have to take action. And so during that time in my life, there was huge lessons of intentionality. And it's not just in our intentionality of pursuing the Lord and worshiping the Lord and honoring the Lord. In the midst of that, we are also intentional in our relationships, also intentional in me at the time, dating, now marriage, now kids. And also it was those conversations that I needed to have then that were preparing me to be a father I am today. Like, to view intentionality in such a way. Like, it's not like I'm just all of a sudden going to have a kid and be that man who or the father that I wanted to be, especially because I had crappy role models and stuff growing up. So intentionality, I think for me, I know we've talked about last episode, kind of the different learning processes that you and I had experienced last episode with certain words. For me, the word is intentionality. The to avoid being a sluggard, to pursue wisdom, be intentional. Yeah. And what's brilliant about knowing the Lord is that you have a foundation of security, you have a foundation of identity of who you are. And now what you're doing is you're being intentional with applying that identity as you're walking, as you're going forward. And for me, the time of my life back when I was 21, Micah, was learning under you guys and working at the time, I guess I was at Chevy or just leaving Hastings, something like that. Those were the things that I was intentional with, was my friendships and my job and pursuing the Lord. Now there's a lot more responsibilities under that. And I think that God was training me and shaping that intentionality for me as responsibilities kind of picked up with being a dad, being a husband, and all of these things as well. Being a pastor.
There's a sense, I think, where, like, props to you. You took advice at a young age and have implemented it, and it's not the mindset of a sluggard. Yeah. You didn't say, "Man, look where Micah and Ryan are in ministry. I'll never be there."
Do that.
What you did is you said, man, this is my heart as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to dive in as deep as I can get to learn.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, like, this isn't you know best. This isn't you're the wise one in your own eyes. This is you saying, like, there are some things that I need to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn it from whoever,
Yeah.
because the goal is I want to grow in this.
Well, I think all three of us would say of ourselves, none of us feel like we've arrived.
Oh gosh, no.
All of us are still pushing forward and investigating new things.
I mean, you told me something last episode that like wrecked my whole perspective on something that I thought I had down.
Well, this is just a practical thing. This is another verse in Proverbs. It doesn't use the word sluggard. It says the sloth, but I think similar concept. And it says, whoever is slothful will not roast his game, his animal, but the diligent man gets precious wealth. And so like from even a practical standpoint, we had somebody call us recently and they said, hey, look, we just slaughtered a cow and we've got all this extra stuff, from our cow last season. Would you like some of it? And I'm like, please.
Yes.
And so I expected him to bring me a little bit, and he brought me a massive ice chest full. And I told Michelle, I was like, we've got our meat for the next 4 months.
That's awesome.
We don't have to buy meat. So now we're buying sides or whatever. But and so
that's huge.
In my mind, what I'm thinking, I think of this verse. I literally think of this verse. Like, I could every day on my way home pick up Chick-fil-A, pick up roses, pick up whatever, or I can roast my game.
Yep.
And the difference at the end of the month will be about $400 in my pocket. I mean, realistically, because if I pick up dinner on the way home every time, I'm losing that money, right?
Fast food is like the most expensive thing you can buy.
I saw this the other day. It was like people are finally going to start eating healthy because of how much fast food costs. And I was like, that's probably true. It's actually cheaper to buy some good groceries.
Do you remember,
now.
side note, you remember how for a long time people were like, well, eating healthy is going to be too expensive?
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if that was like a lie that the fast food companies were like purveying to people so that they would, because I mean, there are some health food things that are more expensive. But the idea of eating cleaner and not just going out to eat and do fast food will save you a ton of money.
Well, part of the reason, quote, health food is more expensive even in the grocery stores is because people let their fruits and vegetables rot.
Yeah.
I love the memes that are like, bought this box of salad today, can't wait to throw it out in 2 weeks when it's soggy. So, but yeah, this idea, like, I know this is a very generic statement, and I know, but this verse is also a verse that plays in my head regularly. Like, roast your game. Take what you have, cook what you take what you have in front of you, Ryan, and work it. Do it, so that you can keep moving forward. I know where I want to be in 5 years. I know the person I want to be. I know how I want to know the scripture. One of the things, Pierce, that you probably heard me say back then, because I said, you won't trip on a crack in a sidewalk and fall into faithfulness of God. You won't trip on a crack in a sidewalk and love God accidentally more. I was like, it has to be something that you are intentionally pursuing. And I know where I want to be. I know where I want to be as a husband. I know where I want to be as a father. I know what my physical goals are. I know what my monetary goals are. I know what my spiritual goals are. And I know that there are a lot of people who are like, do you have a 5-year plan? And I think a lot of Christians kind of scoff at that. And they're like, yeah, trust the Lord. Okay, trust the Lord. But my goodness, my feeling is if you don't have some sort of forward-looking plan, the default setting will be sluggard looking.
I don't think we were, on a practical note, I don't think we were built to stop working. And I don't mean working like in hard labor.
Yeah.
So like you even see it like in retirement. There's a lot of people who retire and then get sick because they stop doing things. And I'm not talking about
they're
like
inactive.
Yeah, I'm not talking about hard labor. I think part of it too is not just inactivity. I think part of it too is a lack of drive forward.
Yep. Yeah.
So for example, okay, there was a series John Piper did back in the day where he was dogging on people who retire and buy an RV
and collect shells on the beach in Florida.
Yeah. So he has a point, like a practical point. He was making a spiritual point. He's a practical point though, in terms of like, that's not the best way to go about life. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying an RV to travel after you retire. I think the problem comes in when you stop having a drive and motivation. So like, what if you're some like simple things, like what if you retire and you get an RV so that you can go spend time with your grandkids on a consistent basis? That's a simple one. Or so that you can take your wife a couple months a year to go up to these different places around the country.
Yeah.
Like that's what I mean. That's
You're
that's
not
a
checking
simple
out
drive,
of
right?
life.
Right. Or you buy an RV because there's a huge population of people that travel in RVs all over, and you're like, you know
They
what?
need Jesus.
I want to go start doing ministry. So like, there's ways that you can implement those things without it being a standard of like, you're stupid if you buy an RV when you retire.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difference is not just inactivity, although that's a huge part of it physically. I think the lack of drive forward.
Yeah.
And that is not a healthy place to be.
Yeah.
I have, I think, experienced some like, not a lack of drive. I'm not sure I'll ever have a lack of drive. That's not in my DNA. But like this last fall, I think I was like trying to figure out what that drive needs to be.
Right.
And it actually, like, it made this fall really weird for me.
Yeah.
The fall of 2023 was probably one of the weirdest times of my life, and nothing looked different. It just felt weird because I think I was trying to figure out where my drive needed to go, where I needed to be focused, where my energy needed to be spent. And even so, it wasn't that I wasn't driven, it was that I didn't have a specific place to go. And it did feel a little bit like there were definitely days where I was like, I don't really feel like doing anything today.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example of like how that produces that perspective. If you don't have a drive, you're just going to want to, like the, what did it say? Like the rusty hinge?
Mm-hmm.
Like the hinge.
Like the door on its hinges.
Yeah. Is a sluggard
in his bed.
I think that there's days like that. So I don't want people to hear that like, hey, if you ever have a day where you're like, you know what, I just don't feel like doing anything today. I don't think that that could be an emotional thing. That could be
sometimes you need rest.
Sometimes you just need rest.
Look, I don't think inactivity is always sluggardly.
No. That's
you need rest. You need reprieve. Jesus said to the disciples, come to me to a quiet place where you can rest. And so I said it at the beginning, I think busyness is a waste of time. I can be.
Yeah.
And I think that sluggard, like laziness, idleness, let me say that, like inactivity can be a waste of time, but both busyness and inactivity can be incredibly beneficial depending on the season and the aim.
Yeah. We were just talking, Ryan, you said when we moved to 4 services, I don't know, we may have moved to 4 services by the time this comes out, but
not yet.
Okay. When we moved to 4 services, you're going to have
Next
to
Sunday.
say the rest of my Sunday needs to be nothing.
Yeah.
Because that's an important thing. Like, it's not a small thing for you to teach 4 sermons on a Sunday morning. And so like someone could say, dude, you're being lazy. You have the whole day, which might affect you. I'd be like, screw you, dude, for saying something stupid like that.
Michael will be like, tell him to come talk to me.
I'll invite him over to watch a football game in the afternoon and tell him to sit their butt on the couch. Like I will on purpose on Sundays now chill.
Yeah.
And there are many times.
And Saturday nights for me too.
Mm-hmm. There are many times when I'm doing a weekend event or I do a disc golf chapel trip where I leave and I come home on Saturday night late and then do Sunday. And now it's like, it doesn't make any sense for me to like work on that Sunday afternoon. And then Monday, everything starts over again. Like there have to be times of reprieve, of rest.
Yeah, it has to be.
But it's different than saying, I don't want to do anything.
Right.
Like a sluggard perspective.
Well, yeah, because the rest on Sunday afternoon is preparing me for Monday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that I can be effective.
Our goal is ministry. Our goal is not time. And this is where I think people screw up in the conversation about like a direction in life. The goal is not the amount of time spent. It's really the goal of like of the quality towards the So like to your point earlier, sometimes busyness can be a waste of time.
Yep.
So like someone asked me one time, like, how many hours a week do you spend prepping for Sunday, trying to figure out how to pay me at a previous church? And I was like, that's a stupid question. Because if it takes me 3 hours to do the same thing it takes someone else 30 hours to do, why do I get penalized because they suck at it and I'm okay at it?
Yeah.
It's a dumb perspective to think the harder I work, the better it is. No. It's accomplishing the goal. It's the drive. It's the quality of time rather than the quantity of time.
Well, my friend Ryan in Colorado, he I mentioned him last episode too. There you go, Ryan. 2 shout outs. So he does all sorts of cool leather work and bags and purses. Check him out on Cotillier Made. I'll text that to Pierce and we can maybe tell people about that. Anyway, doesn't matter. Good
He's
dude.
got to pay us to sponsor this episode. Yeah. I'm gonna beep out the name.
He's a great dude. And we were talking the other day, and I was just like, "What do you have planned for this year?" And he goes, "I'm going to finally finish my basement. Like and finish it out. I want to create." He does all of his leather work in his basement, but his kids have a big play area in the basement, and his wife has a little workout area in the basement. He goes, "I want to make that space more functional." And he goes, and he's got 4 boys, and he goes, "And I'm going to have the boys help me so that we can work together and I can show them and I can teach them." And I'm like, see, that's brilliant. Like, that's so stinking brilliant. And I was telling him what a great memory that's going to be. Like, of learning how to do these things and working side by side with their dad.
Yeah. Taking what you have and like I said earlier, being intentional with it. It's so funny because if we were to put on paper, hey, could you get this done more efficiently by yourself, hiring a crew, doing whatever. Absolutely. Like if we're just looking at it from a perspective of I need to get this done, things have to be done and productive, then sure, yeah. But the fact that he's going to take his kids alongside with it and take the time, the extra time to teach them, to lead them, to spend time with them, to not only have them build skills that they could use the rest of their life, but also build character and like learn in the midst of that. So like
he is planting what will be a beautiful harvest.
Absolutely. And it's a level of intentionality that if the goal was just proficiency or efficiency or whatever, then people would ignore it. But it's a level of intentionality that broadens the perspective. Yeah, that was a huge thing with me. Whenever we had our house closer to the base, we bought that in 2021. We were replacing all the hardware in the house, and Riley was walking, and I guess she would have been 1.5 at that point, almost 2. And she really wanted to help. But you're talking about a 1-year-old really wants to help. But it was in that moment, there was just a switch from me. Just like, man, I wanted to get every door done today. But I don't know if she won't remember it, but now I would say that the intentionality starting then has continued intentionality where she's quick to be like, you know what, I'll turn off the TV. I'll ignore what I'm doing because Dad's working in the garage right now. I'm going to go work with him right now. And so even though she may not remember that specific instance, it began in intentionality. Mm-hmm. There's pictures of us that I look back on and I cherish that I'm showing her how a screw goes into a hinge and we're sitting next to a door. And so for me, the growth for me as a father of being like, I got to spend that time.
Well, you posted a picture recently on your stories or on something where Hannah's in the kitchen working, Riley's standing on a stool working, and
Adeline's trying to crawl up there.
Yeah. And I was like, man, that's a cool moment. You got your girls all there working together.
Yeah, I was working in the garage and I walked out and I was like, oh,
it's precious, man. It's beautiful. Yeah.
So, but it's again, it reawakens me just the word intentionality, like it doesn't.
That's it.
Is wisdom. What's funny about wisdom too, just like from an anecdotal standpoint, like my growth in wisdom is it seems to always be different than what you think it's going to be. And what I love, and what I mean by that is like when I was younger, and you two guys were. I was learning. The relationship between us was very much teacher student. Like, there was times where I would go tell you guys either dumb things that I had done or just like life lessons I was learning. And the information I would get from y'all, I'd be like, what is that? Like, that feels so weird and out of left field. But of course that is the wise way to look at this instead of from my unwise or my ill-experienced perspective.
You
and so
were
like,
so stupid.
I know I was, but like, I'm thankful, kind of stressing what you had said earlier, Micah, like I'm thankful that the Lord had begun that time in my life with establishing a heart of humility to take what I was hearing and gleaning. And it's interesting that just thinking about wisdom moving forward for those people listening and watching, just I think a huge start point is humility, kind of what ignoring or going back of what Proverbs 26 says, the sluggard is wiser in his own eyes, like acknowledging you're not wiser. Like you can glean wisdom, you can glean knowledge, you can glean these things and be open and perceptive to it so that you can live a life that's not based off being a sluggard, but pursuing wisdom, intentionality and wisdom. Yeah, absolutely.
There was a lot of guys I said the exact same things to that I said to you. And as far as I know, you're the only one who listened.
Dude, yeah.
My whole goal was to win.
You're miles ahead of where I was at 33, and that's cool.
It's weird. There was a point I remember when I was in my mid-20s, and I remember
kilometers.
Thinking, I was like, I'm curious if I'll be, because when we first started hanging out, Micah, you were 30 and I was 20, well, ish. We had known each other prior, but 30 and 21. And I remember thinking like, man, when I get to 30, like my goal, two of my goals was I want to be at a point where I'm blessing or teaching or leading in a way that Micah was to me at 30. And then I was like, I want to be married before Ryan was married.
that's not hard, man.
That's a good goal.
And I was like, those are my two goals. I don't know if I made the Micah one, but I did make.
Oh yeah, definitely did
make that one.
Well, I mean, on a practical level, like you are teaching in ministry in the same way. At 30, I don't remember which house I was in.
You were at Princeton.
Was I?
Mm-hmm.
So at 30, I didn't have any properties but the house I lived in.
True. Yeah. And then at 30 for me, where were we? That was 2020. So we were just in Princeton at the time, but I had the other house prior. Yeah. So I had Harris.
You had already
Princeton.
done it.
Look at that, man. I'm just beating you guys. That was the whole point.
You're better than us, man.
Yeah, I'll learn under these just so I can win,
Yeah.
Just joking. But I'm thankful. I'm obviously thankful
you're no sluggard.
I'm obviously thankful for you guys, but yeah, just thankful that God opened my eyes and my ears and just humbled me to a point of like, there's people out there that care, like just because that was my whole life, was that I had people that didn't care, that weren't intentional. And then there's our people that you can glean under and learn under, and don't be hardened of heart because of experiences, and I think we used to this, or one of you guys had said like a default is to be a sluggard. And so like if I'd allowed my past experiences to harden me so much, my default would be to be this sluggard thing instead of leaning upon the Lord and letting him humble me. If you don't have
a forward-looking perspective,
you'll probably just be a sluggard.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the things I think you did really well as well in that process of growth is you didn't look at me and Ryan or anybody else that was investing into you and say, I need to be like them. You said, I want to learn from them. You're very different than us. So instead of saying like, I want to do it exactly the way that Micah did it or Ryan did it, you gleaned from us. And that was what allowed you, I think, to be successful and continues to allow you to be successful, is that you're not trying to be somebody else. You're gleaning, but you're still able to be who you are.
Yeah, that was one of the big, this became Pierce's testimony for a little bit. But that was one of the big things, big life lessons around that time, from probably between 17 and 20, was me turning to God, and instead of being hardened through so much of the stuff that I went through with my dad, saying, God, like, do I need to learn from this, or do I just need to push past it? Like, what do I need to do? And there was this very obvious lesson that came forward that was like, God shaping my heart to know that let me glean and take away the things that I need to, and let me push through the things that I need to, and don't ever put people on a pedestal equal to God, to be them or to remain under them, but only let God fill that spot and then learn from the people around. And so I'm thankful that was a lesson coming into meeting you guys as well, of just like, I don't need to make these two men something they're not in my life. I don't need to fill any sort of familial figure or anything like that. I don't need somebody to mimic, but
you just glean.
I just glean. I learn under, disciple under you.
I think it's how we have to be. Like, I honestly don't think I would be where I'm at with, and I don't have very many properties. I just have one plus the one I'm living in. But like, that journey started because I ran into Josh Holbert at a Double Dave's one day, and he's telling me about what they just started doing, and I was like, wait, what?
Hold on, yeah.
And so then Josh told me how they did it, and I was like, I'm in. And literally that day I told Cammie, I'm like, hey, we're gonna do this, and this. And she was like, well, so I had one conversation with Josh Holbert, who they were ahead and are still very far ahead in that. But like, him and John had just started this house thing. And so like, it's that, like you're saying, like, there was this like drive to go forward, and someone goes, hey, here's a means you could do that. And you're like, I don't have any pride in me that says it has to be my idea.
Yeah.
I want to glean from anybody else I can to accomplish whatever goal I'm trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Dope.
I got it.
Simpler view, yeah.
Don't be a sluggard.
That's right.
Genius.
Perfect.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
No. You know who's my favorite genius? Steven. We are at the Garden Audio as always. Now, you can't reach out to Steven through a Garden Audio social media page. He no longer has that, but he has a social media page with his wife for their realty group, 87 Realty Group. If you're interested in real estate tips and tricks, or if you specifically live in the San Angelo area and looking for properties, go check them out. Go see what they got going on over there. If you're not interested in all of that, go check them out and just
we're officially now working on Simpler Worship.
Oh yeah, so you need to, so go tell
I don't know the timeline, but like, we've officially started.
So we have Simpler Bible, and then we'll have Simpler Worship, and Steven is a part of that, where you'll be recording Simpler Worship stuff
and
at this
Pierce
same
Love is gonna
studio.
start Simpler movie reviews.
Simpler movie reviews.
For family.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. But yes, so go tell Steven thank you. Go say thank you for Simpler, and that you're excited for Simpler Worship and for the things to come. Also, I mentioned a second ago, Simpler Bible. Go check out Simpler Bible. We've got links in the show notes for that as well. Daily videos for biblical growth, and you'll be going through, not in detail every single chapter and verse of the Bible, but you're going through 600 chapters of the Bible this year, with the entirety of the story of the Bible shown. There's probably a way better way to say that, but that's how we did it. Also, linked in our show notes is Micah's website, micahmariano.com. We are at the beginning of 2024, and as you've heard us talk about on here about Eagles Wings Disc Golf, that's a ministry that Micah partakes in. Micah goes on the road and leads chapels and preaches and teaches and builds relationships with disc golf players and disc golf pros throughout the United States. But Eagles Wings is also a global organization, interacts with globally. So a good way that you can be a part of that ministry if you desire to be a part of it. First of all, just go check out what's going on. Follow Micah on social media, see everything that's happening over there. But if you want to be involved, go to micahmariano.com, go to the donate tab and donate. And every cent that you give is going to those travels this year. Is going towards Micah's ministry that's happening, and a lot of that's happening through Eagles Wings. So if you want an opportunity to be more involved and have the means, go donate. And also on the website, go to his social media links, follow along, and you'll see a lot more. Like I said, we talk about it here on the podcast, but you'll see pictures, you'll see clips, you'll see all the stuff that Mike is doing on the road with them. It's pretty awesome to see everything that God's doing through that. And hey, as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? Catch y'all on the 5th Tuesday.